And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. Frank Vasner is out. Ed, what is your opening statement? We'll start with you and then I'll go with mine.
My opening statement, it seems that the Tigers have certainly come back down to earth, and as of late during their recent losing streak, and as a result have wasted quality starts by their starting rotation in the process. But it's not surprising when you look at the current makeup and status of the team itself.
Yeah, and which leads to my opening statement. Just when I thought the Tigers were going to make progress when they reached fourth in the American League Central Division, they came back down to earth, like you mentioned before, and they bottomed back out to last place. They've lost four straight actually, two to the Royals and then two to the Indians. So that's our opening. Those are our opening statements. Before we get started, we want to remind everyone to download the sports mobile app VigIt, where great fans cover. Enter the referral code STABLES for Stables Media when you sign up. Available on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Download the VigIt app and sign up with the referral code STABLES for 1,000 free Vig coins. VigIt is where great fans cover. First off, the Red Wings last week signed Jeff Blashill to a contract extension, and now we have an update. It is 2 years. Yes, just 2 short, lousy years for Jeff Blashill. He's going to coach without Dan Bilesma, like we mentioned before. Ed, you and I talked about it with Frank last week on these airwaves on Stables Media. Jeff Blashill was brought into this long-term expensive contract situation, all set up by Ken Holland, and then 4 years later, Ken Holland was shown the door. Steve Yzerman took over. He's slowly but surely trying to fix this whole thing with Jeff Blashill. And Blashill probably evidently didn't have much to do with this whole mess. Now, I have a free agent list right here. This year's unrestricted free agents: Mark Stahl, Darren Helm, Jacob Verana, whom they should re-sign, Valtteri Filppula, Jonathan Bernier, Luke Glendening, Christian Juice, Adam Ernie, Sam Gagne, Philip Hronek, Michael Rasmussen, Alex Biega, Matthias Brome, Dennis Chalowski. They should get rid of him, and Gustav Lindstrom. I think they should give him more time here. Next week's unrestricted free agents: Danny DeKeyser. He's probably gonna get the heave ho after next season. Franz Nielsen becomes an unrestricted free agent next season. Thomas Greiss, Vladislav Nemestikov, Troy Stecher, Philip Zadina, and Robbie Fabry, who has been injured this past season. And then the year after that, in 2023, just 2 unrestricted free agents: Dylan Larkin and Richard Panik. So, Ed, lots of work to do for Steve Yzerman. So Jeff Blashill's out of the question now. They just need to find a replacement, like we discussed last week, for Dan Bilesma. Go right ahead.
Well, it's not necessarily that in terms of finding a replacement for Bilesma that's going to cure all the woes of this team. Yeah, some changes need to be made, considering the fact that this team was lacking in so many different areas, particularly in the power play. But still, at least when it comes to Blashill and knowing with the impending offseason, with all that money coming off the books and all the cap space that it's creating, this is a deal, I thought, or situation to where Yzerman is open to all choices. Whereas what I mean by that is he's more than willing to give Blashill another 2 years to try to sort things out, try to factor in the right combinations, the right lineups, while also giving them the best players to work with, certainly, which was not a benefit that Ken Holland gave him with the start. So in terms of the 4 or so years that Blashill had to deal with Ken Holland-backed drafts and roster signings and transactions and so on and so forth, it seems that Yzerman is giving them that equal amount of time to build it back up to a serviceable team to where Yzerman can make that next decision. Okay, I can give him more time. He's going to be my long-term answer, or we can go in a different direction. Now, if things were to plummet to a even worse next year, as it were be compared to this year, like they start out 2-15 or something, then Yzerman's hand may have to be forced, even if he may, no matter what. But that being said, I still don't see Eisman as one that's rushing this process. He understands that this is a rebuild that's going to take time. You're not going to get everything fixed with one hire or one signing or even one off season. It's called building through the draft, manage your cap space properly, and sign the players that you absolutely need to keep, like the Jonathan Berniers and Thomas Grice's, and so on and so forth. Names that you mentioned before, Taylor, the guys that should absolutely they consider re-signing, and guys that have no business being on here anymore, which in turn is going to free up more money to lend somewhere else, whether it be re-signing another player or using the purchase a better upgrade. So I think in terms of Blashill's extension, if you want to call it that, plus the cap space that's coming off the books, plus the upcoming draft, Eisman was, in my view, was connecting all these together as one singular plan or one singular course for this part of the rebuild, knowing that, again, not everything is going to be fixed in one fell swoop. So you just take your time, you build in the right areas, but you also keep an eye on the situation at hand. And it comes down to it, yeah, your hand may need to be forced, but still, patience is the key concerning Eisman and his plan to rebuild this team.
Yep, definitely. And it's going to take even more time before we find out the fallout and everything else like that. So that's Red Wings. Now, our top story, former Michigan State Spartans men's basketball point guard Keith Appling, who spent two seasons with the Orlando Magic, I think. He was a wanted suspect for a fatal shooting of a 66-year-old man following an argument on Saturday, probably at nighttime. The slain man was not immediately identified. Appling was accused of firing several shots, fatally wounding the man. Yeah, he killed him. Detroit police, according to Detroit police, he drove away, did Appling, from the scene and has not, and since then kept running away, I guess. Appling had faced drug charges in February of 2020 and therefore was sentenced to 18 months of probation. In 2017, he was taken to jail for a year for carrying a concealed weapon and resisting police. Now, the update that we got this past Monday, he was finally taken into custody 2 days later. So Ed, not only is Keith Appling evidently a repeat offender, but he's also becoming even worse of a troublemaker. Go ahead.
Well, becoming worse is an understatement. In fact, it seems like he has reached as low as you can low when you take someone's life or allegedly take someone's life, because again, we don't know the full facts or details of the case. But let's assume that it was Keith Appling was behind this, hence why he's in custody. Unfortunately, it's a culmination, a climax of a series of escalating incidents. Like you mentioned, Taylor, the fact that he pled guilty in 2017 to the issue of his 2016 traffic stop, having a concealed weapon, resisting arrest, resisting police obstructions. Then that factors into a couple years down the road, he faces drug charges in 2020. And as a result of that, he's given an 18-month-long sentence for probation. And then when you add all that up, it turns out he had bench warrants for him in 2 different counties. Man, it's just a case of one person making a bad decision after a bad decision after another, without some type of proper counsel, not some or a mentor or advise some person to give him the right type of advice. Because clearly the people that were enabling this behavior or encouraging behavior or not taking this behavior seriously enough, they either didn't care or didn't give enough effort to helping him turn himself around before it was too late. And now you're at the point of where Keith Appling has gone from standout local star in terms of high school basketball, named Mr. Basketball out of Detroit, to playing for a top-notch, well-known program at Michigan State, which required him, which was easier because it was nearby. It was a local state school. He can stay home in state. And he goes from that to having the career that he had to where, no, he didn't reach the heights that he wanted to go in the NBA, but he still made some money overseas and whatnot. So he still had some achievements in the professional realm of his career, but now he has completely bottomed out. And it's just sad on his part. It's definitely tragic on the part that a man's life was taken all because of an argument. That's the real messed up part about this. Because this was something that did not have to happen. This was an extremely preventable situation, and for whatever the case may be, Keith Appling felt the need that words were not enough. Uh, the in that situation had to escalate and escalate to the point where, instead of walking away, he had to use a weapon or resort to a weapon. And now, as a result, someone is dead, and
Well, he
now
didn't have to
likely
use a weapon at all.
exactly nothing, or just walk away. And now, because of this, someone is dead, and now Keith Appling is likely going to spend the rest of his life in jail. When you take into account his track record. Now, I know Kim Whitley has stated this week that charges or indictments are not going to be filed as of yet, but I believe, especially if it's being reported more and more that Appling was the one who had the gun, and that it was in his possession at the time of the incident, and there's witnesses that can corroborate that, and so on and so forth. More than likely, murder charges will be filed. Probably not first degree, more than likely second degree, given the nature of whether or not this was thought out or planned or plotted in advance in a premeditated fashion. I don't know that.
Ouch.
I don't know that. Well, that would have been if it was first degree, because this was a similar case of an argument that led to someone's death, led to a homicide. More than likely, it'll be second degree murder charges. But still, I believe that's got to be some sort of long-term prison sentence, if not life itself, if he's convicted. So it's just a tragic, sad end to what would have been a hopeful story of a young man, and just another example of almost a cautionary tale of sorts of, hey, if you get in with the wrong crowds, if you don't turn your life around, if you don't take the right advice or concern or care from anyone involved that's around you, or vice versa, this is where you could end up. And now Keith Appling, unfortunately, is just another example of those cautionary tales.
Yeah. And that's why we keep our eyes on stuff like that. This is the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on any outlet anyway. But Keith Appling, yeah, kind of even worse than Darryl Strawberry, really. Darryl Strawberry only did drugs, but Keith Appling took someone's life. Worse. Getting into a physical fight is one thing, but shooting someone with a gun and thus taking their life, worse. Come on. That gets you prison time for the rest of your life. Not just jail, but prison. Yeah. So that's it for that story. Now, Michigan Wolverines men's basketball freshman center Hunter Dickinson earlier today declared for the NBA draft. Now, off the air just minutes ago, less than an hour ago, in our private group chat on Facebook Messenger, Darren Weiss, one of our other co-hosts, pointed out that Dickinson isn't going anywhere. Ed, I want your analogy on that.
I think Darren may be onto something to to an element I agree with, because let's look at the fact that Hunter Dickinson's current draft stock more than likely has them not being considered a first round selection, right? Whereas Franz Wagner had much higher draft board position. Many other outlets having him seen as if not a top 10, then at the very least a first round pick. That's probably one reason that played in this decision to go pro himself, and keep his name in the NBA draft pool. Now, when it comes to Hunter Dickinson, I think there's elements of his game to where some scouts may feel he's not quite necessarily worthy of a first round pick. Yes, he's a big guy, he can work, he's athletic, he's agile, but there's still elements of his game that he can improve on, i.e. his foul trouble. Another example could be adding more to his offense, whether it be, for instance, developing an outside shot of sorts. It doesn't necessarily have to be a three, but at least more of a variety with his mid-range shots. Because in this modern era of basketball, shooting has taken more precedence over having exclusivity with your big men dominating or working out of the paint. You can't just throw it into the big guy and have him back down somebody in the post whether we're drawing attention or getting his basket that way. The days of Shaq doing that and Tim Duncan and so on and so forth, those days are past. Now you see more focus on shooting and playmaking, and the 3-point shot has become more and more focused on as a result. So in terms of Hunter Dickinson, with his play style, how he could fit in today's day and age of basketball, it will be incumbent on him to add more versatility to his offensive presence. And for that reason, amongst others, I could see him being a very fringe second rounder, if not an upper to mid second round selection. Or if all things considered, because you got to remember, he currently still retains his eligibility by signing a certified agent from the NCAA. So that leads me to believe that just in case, if things are not looking out for him in regards to whether it be combine or getting advice from his group, or looking how things may go with his draft stock or how the money may look, whatever the case may be, he can consider coming back to the school. This is a situation where I think where Darren was mentioned about, he's not going anywhere, because this may remind you a lot of Trey Burke. Remember, Trey Burke was essentially going to be a one and done after the 2012 season. And for a while, it looked like he was going to declare and he was leaving. Then days later, weeks later, he announced he was coming back, and we all know what happened after that. But still, there is an example, a precedent of where Hunter Dickinson's ultimate decision may come down to where he's going to test the pool, see where things are going with his draft stock. And if things aren't to his liking or to his satisfaction, he can just say, okay, I still got my eligibility, so I'm going to come back for at least one more year. Now, it is worth noting that he has until July 7th to withdraw his name. So that's still a full 2 months away from now. So anything could still happen between now and then. But in the case that he does not come back, I don't think Michigan, whether it be Michigan fans, Juwan Howard, or the program, should have any worry, because between Terrence Williams, between Brandon Johns, between Jaron Fouts, and Austin Davis, the guys that they used in rotation last year in the instances where Dickinson was not available, whether it be foul trouble, injury, or whatever, those guys stepped up as their big men rotation. So now with those guys coming back, correct me if I'm wrong, I may be wrong, but with all those guys coming back, plus the fact that you're adding Moussa Diabate as part of your 2021 class, the highly regarded, highly touted, number one ranked recruiting class in the country, that could be a way to facilitate, fill in some needs, fill in some potential holes in your roster, whether it be at center or with the recent now departure of Franz Wagner at small forward. So this is, to me, not a panic if you're Juwan Howard or if you're Michigan or if you're a Michigan basketball fan. To me, this should be a celebration of a win-win. Either, Hunter will reconsider. That's why he had that certified agent. He'll reconsider. He'll come back, go back at it for one more year, knowing that the guys he already has coming back with him, for example, Eli Brooks, he's got that cohesiveness coming, to go back to if he wants to come back. Or it's a win for Hunter because he's going to go pro and he's going to get paid for his worth. So I don't think that should be a decision we should be chastising or be negative or belittle him about. At the end of the day, that's his choice, his decision. And if he is going to be leaving, hey, hats off to him. And I wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah. And speaking of Trey Burke, I remember Jeff Moss roasting Joe Dumars in person at the Palace of Auburn Hills about Trey Burke, which Joe Dumars should have picked up, of course. And Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag was kicked out of the Palace when Trey Burke used to play for the Utah Jazz. And speaking of the Utah Jazz, Pistons passed up on another draft pick, Donovan Mitchell, who also was going to the Utah Jazz, and the Pistons picked Luke Kennard instead. Yeah.
And now Luke Kennard is getting paid $40 million to literally sit on the bench and do nothing, as the Clippers are getting their behinds kicked and are now down 0-2 in the series against Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavs. So, good investment all around.
Yeah, I know. The Clippers are going to get eliminated in the first round. By the way,
they won't have to worry. They won't have to worry about. Think about this. They did all this tanking to avoid playing the Lakers in the first round, only to walk into the buzzsaw that is Luka Doncic, who's been waiting on this since last year. And if they get bounced, forget about not making it past making it to the conference finals. If they can't even get past the first round
or second round.
Forget about that. If they can't even if they're a one and done, that may arguably be a bigger embarrassment to them than blowing that 3-1 lead last year. It's another mark on Paul George's playoff legacy, and it's certainly a mark on Kawhi Leonard's legacy when you consider the fact that he had all this attention on him following his decision to leave Toronto in 2019 after winning the championship and Finals MVP. A lot of people and everybody, including myself, thought, okay, maybe he's going to actually consider going to the Lakers. Then he pulled a fast one on them at the 11th hour and then signed with the Clippers instead, helped bringing Paul George there in the process. And then when you factor in the 3-1 blown lead and that they scapegoated Doc Rivers by firing him, and now you come back to this situation, and now you're getting torched by the same guy who was giving it to you in the bubble last year, who, frankly, if he had a healthy Kristaps Porzingis, there's a good argument that Dallas could have won that series last year itself. So when you add in that, and now Luka performing at the level that he's performing right now, to where I think he's going to be borderline, if not there already, top 5 player in the league with this kind of performance, especially if the Mavs go on a deep run to playoffs. That says a lot about the Clippers. That says a lot about Paul George, and says a lot about Kawhi Leonard. And remember, Kawhi is an impending free agent this year. I believe he has a player option. He can opt in for one more season, or he can become an unrestricted free agent. And if that happens, oh my.
Yeah. David Gavall wanted to comment on Keith Appling being arrested. Yes, it's a damn shame. That's all he said. But yeah, it's out there. Not only do we agree, the truth is out there. Yeah, Keith Appling, we discussed it just recently. Just a tragedy to see him do something like that. But with that being said, that's the Hunter Dickinson story. Now to the Detroit Tigers. A weekly look at the Tigers. They are 18-30, back in last in the American League Central, tied for second worst in Major League Baseball with the Arizona Diamondbacks. We mentioned this before in our opening statement in this episode. Right now, it's tied at a double bagel, 0-0, scoreless. Right now, 2 outs and a man on first, but the Tigers are challenging something. But Michael Fulmer is on the mound. Jose Urena was starting against one Tristan McKenzie, who had a 6.89 ERA and a 1.69 WHIP coming in. So the Tigers still haven't scored a darn run. The Tigers can't even touch a high-numbered pitcher in Tristan McKenzie, who is probably just recently called up from Cleveland's one of Cleveland's farm teams, and the Tigers still can't touch him.
Yeah,
he's recently been struggling.
Yeah, the only guy that's had any moderate level of success against him or in the lineup tonight was Shope. He's
Scope.
For Scope, and he's 2 for 3. But again, that speaks to the constant theme of the Tigers not bringing guys home when they're on base. What was that old Twitter trend I used to see years back that's still relevant now? Tigers threaten but do not score. It was the same in 2011 as it is now in 2021.
They keep teasing us with that stuff. They do.
You have guys on base where they're sometimes less than 2 outs, and yet the bats keep coming up cold in the clutch. I don't know why, whether it be, you strand 9 runs in the loss against KC, which started this losing streak to begin with. You leave the bases loaded in a 6-5 loss at the 9th inning against Cleveland. And then just the other day or yesterday, they get dominated again by Aaron Savall. Savall, who's had his way with the Tigers as of late, or frankly in his whole career against them. He's now 6-0 in terms of 7. Right, get this: in 7 career starts against the Tigers, Aaron Savall is 6-0 with a 2.19 ERA, and that's just including 3 runs this season alone. 3 wins this season alone. So that speaks to not only how he knows that Tigers wants to go after that Tigers lineup batter by batter, but it also speaks to how ineffective this team can really be in key certain moments. I don't know what funk or what it was or what habits they got away from, but this is certainly not what was anticipated or what was expected to see, considering the fact that they had the big winning streak where they won 8 of 10 or whatever it was over the past couple of weeks. And now, I get it. In a long season, you're going to have peaks and valleys, but this is just flat out embarrassing. And if it's not the offense being ineffective, it's the bullpen once again wasting quality starts by your starting rotation.
It's both.
Spencer Turnbull, in his first start since his no-hitter, he had 6 innings, gave up 3 runs, but still, that's more than adequate quality start from your starting pitcher, and then your bullpen blows it. Case in point, pardon the pun, Casey Mize. He had a beautiful gem of a game.
Yeah.
He pitched 6-7 innings, had no runs when he left, had
6 1/3.
6 1/3, almost went 7. Had no runs on his board when he left. He gave up 1 as a result of the reliever giving up an earned run, giving up a sac fly. But still, that's a 2-1 lead going into the 9th, and you don't shut the door.
Yeah, Fulmer didn't even get an out. Obviously, yeah, I think he's better than that, but he just choked.
Yeah, and Fulmer has been terrific in my view coming out of the bullpen, but that was just one bad outing, but unfortunately was a trend of what the bullpen has been continuing to do, not just for this year, but for years, plural, going back to even the days of Verlander at his peak. Because remember, all those gems, like I even made a comment on a YouTube video once that got a bunch of likes, that basically said, if I could count on hand the number of times, or the number of gems that Justin Verlander threw that was wasted either by ineffective offense or horrible bullpen, that he would easily be over 300 wins and close to 400. And that stands true here, to where you have Casey Mize, who's starting to find his groove, starting to find his stride again. He gets you 6 1/3 with no runs. That becomes only 1 earned run after a sac fly, and then you don't shut the door. That's an indictment on you as a team, that in your inability to get this done. That's why you're at the state that you're in right now. That's why now you're back to tied for last place.
Yep. Well, tied for second worst in Major League Baseball with the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, but you're back. Yeah, but now you're back to last
place in the division.
Yeah, back to last place in the division. And whether you want to credit AJ Hinch or give him some blame for this, sure. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the players. And if you're not executing properly, if you're not figuring out the right fundamentals in the key moments, or you're now all of a sudden starting to forget them in the past week or so, it speaks to how the current makeup of this team is, how there's still ways to go, if ever. Obviously there's still obvious glaring needs that need to be addressed and fixed. And while I consider AJ Hinch to be a quality manager, he's still going to need players that can help bring an impact to the game, whether it be through hitting or especially through pitching, particularly relief pitching. But again, that all stems from the fact that when you have an owner who is a cheapskate, that seems to be more concerned with keeping his pockets lined and filled than in regards of contributing or investing in the team, which will in turn help put more money in his doggone pocket. You get what you get.
Yeah, definitely. And Fulmer just struck out Ramirez after a challenge was overturned, and then Fulmer walked somebody on 4 straight pitches. That challenge, the initial call, by the way, was a hit by pitch. That was overturned because it didn't hit that batter. But that being said, all things considered, still no score going into the bottom of the 8th. See if the Tigers can either do something to just put a dent in their tank or whatnot. But speaking of the Tigers, we go now to the TMSTP Story Vault, which we haven't done in weeks, maybe months or something like that. This is like an instant classic. Yeah, but it's from Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag on Anthony Fenech no longer working at the Freep. Yeah, headlines, Anthony Fenech no longer works at the Freep. And here we go. The DSR has been able to confirm that Tigers Detroit Free Press beat writer Anthony Fenech no longer works at the paper. Fenech's dismissal from the Freep ends a bizarre saga regarding his employment there. While we still have no idea where Fenech is, he hasn't tweeted since July of 2020, and his last Freep article was posted August 28th. We do have some interesting tidbits of Fenech's last few months at the Daily. The DSR has learned through multiple industry sources that Fenech's problems started at the end of the 2019 baseball season. The Freep believed that Fenech had not been acting responsibly in his duties as the Tigers beat writer, which is a bizarre twist since in August of 2019, the paper's sports editor Chris Thomas posted a lengthy defense of Fenech when former Tiger great Justin Verlander refused to be in Fenech's presence while in the clubhouse of Minute Maid Park in Houston. But I was told that Fenech's juvenile behavior led to Fenech being removed from the Tigers beat and placed on Detroit Pistons coverage. This occurred when human bowling ball Vince Ellis led the Freep to become a full-time propagandist for Tom the New Jim Crow Gores on the Pistons website, pistons.com. No word of Pistons employees are charged $20 for a 20-minute phone call from the team's Henry Ford practice facility, or should we say Platinum Equity. As we remember, we had that discussion with Bianca Tylek of Worth Rises, of course, but moving on. Anyway, being moved from the Tigers to the Pistons was seen by the paper and by Fenech as a demotion, but something occurred between the time of the slapdown and Fenech actually beginning back covering the Tigers. But in true Fenech fashion, he messed that up as well. I've been told that the last straw was when the baseball season reconvened in July after the COVID-19 delay. Fenech brought pizza from Jet's Pizza, I may add, to the park, Minute Maid Park that is, to share with Lord knows who during the team's training camp at Comerica, possibly the media. Or the rest of the media, or whoever, which was another prank the next day regarding pizza, and that soon after these hilarious hijinks, Fenech was removed from the Tigers beat and placed on the breaking news desk. But after having that job at the paper for a few weeks, Fenech disappeared off the face of the earth. I've been told by several acquaintances of Fenech that he is not answering text messages and that phone calls to his cell go directly to voicemail. He hasn't been on his PlayStation in a long time either. So since Verlander labeled Fenech unprofessional and unethical, Fenech has been demoted by his paper, given a last-minute reprieve, demoted again from his precious Tigers beat, and has fallen off the planet. I am not sure that JV needed any vindication, but considering the massive amount of negative press he received from the blue checkmark baseball Twitter brigade when he had Fenech barred in the summer of 2019, you're going to add this notch to his Cy Young awards, his MVP, his World Series title, and his marrying a supermodel, Kate Upton by name. Years ago, I famously wrote that the Fenech experiment at the Free Press would end in some sort of calamity, and as Tom Reagan once famously said in Miller's Crossing, quote, "I'll tell you, but first you got to promise not to say I told you so," unquote. I never say, and then quote, I never say that, and I don't like people who do, unquote. I told you so. Now, to recap, Ed, we learned that since that Fennec was in San Jose, Costa Rica, but Fennec was undoubtedly such a fool throughout his career, although he did his job breaking the news properly. Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, while he did some things that may constitute as being effective at his job, he still had a level of air to him that was frankly unbecoming, unprofessional, and just flat out disturbing. I don't know if it was going to be how long it would take for the Free Press to realize this, but finally they came to their senses once his behavior, frankly, became too obvious to ignore for far too long. And they had enough. It's like the line in Casino. The bosses had enough. They had enough. How much longer were they going to take? So they made an example out of him. It's worth noting that this was, I guess you could say there was a footnote or a coda to this story. Apparently, as a follow-up of sorts, the sports rag had Jeff Moss had another article, if you want to call it that, saying we found Anthony Fenech, and it was a picture of a map of Costa Rica. So maybe that's where he's resigning now. Maybe that's where he's vacationing after seemingly vanishing off the face of the earth for all this time.
Which was a figure of speech.
Yeah. So my best bet is, hey, if that's where he wants to be for now or for a long period of time, hey, enjoy your vacation or enjoy your time there. Please don't bring any COVID with you if you decide to come back to the United States. And may God help whoever tries to hire you as their sports writer.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your life, brother. No more free for you. So that is our TMSTP Story Vault. And now we go to our closing statement as Robbie Grossman drives in Nico Goodrum two batters after Nico Goodrum leads off with a double in the bottom of the eighth. Tigers lead the Indians 1-0. 2 out, bases empty. Quantrill on the mound. I don't know who's going to come up now. I think it's going to be Harold Castro or Jamer Candelario. I think Harold Castro. Yeah, Harold Castro. But anyway, closing statement. Ed, you go first.
My closing statement, again, to reiterate what I mentioned earlier about the Michigan Wolverines basketball program. Fret not, do not panic. This should not be seen as a free fall situation, even if Hunter Dickinson decides to leave. You still have returning players from last year that want to make things right in terms of how things ended. You have the #1 recruiting class that's coming into your school, and you have the reigning coach of the year. You should be fine. Do not worry. You're going to be all right.
Yes, definitely. My closing statement, the Tigers, again, have found their water level, but we'll see what happens in the future. Before we go, I want to remind everyone to download the sports mobile app VigIt, where great fans cover. Enter the referral code Stables for Stables Media when you sign up. Capital S, the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B as in billionaire. Download the VigIt app from either the Apple App Store or Google Play and sign up with the referral code Stables for 1,000 free Vig coins. VigIt is where great fans cover. Ed, excellent job as always. That concludes another fine episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. We'll be back next week. On behalf of Frank Vashner, for Ed Smith, myself, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. And follow Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people, hit them with a hind. We rest our case. Stay safe.